My husband didn't know I was watching him while he was seeing another woman. I couldn't remember a time when I had felt more lost. I had spent so many years of my life thinking that I had everything I wanted, a happy marriage, a life full of love and security. But that illusion was shattered in an instant, and I didn't know what to do with myself anymore. My husband, Jason, was my best friend, my confidant, my partner. We had met in college, and from the moment we connected, I knew we were meant to be. We got married 2 years after we started dating, and everything felt perfect. Our life together was a series of little rituals: weekend coffee dates, spontaneous movie nights, long walks in the park. We had built this world together, and I couldn't imagine a life without him. But as time went on, I started noticing little things, small shifts in his behavior that seemed insignificant at first. He was working longer hours, coming home late, getting more distracted when we were together. I told myself it was just work stress, or maybe the natural ebb and flow of a long-term relationship. But then I found something that made my blood run cold. One evening, I noticed his phone on the counter, buzzing with a message. It wasn't unusual for me to check his phone, but I had never felt the need to invade his privacy until that moment. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was intuition, maybe it was that nagging feeling I couldn't shake. I picked up the phone, unlocked it, and saw a text message from someone named Olivia. "I miss you. Can't stop thinking about you. You looked so amazing last weekend." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My heart pounded, and I felt this deep, sickening dread settle in my chest. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was nothing, but I couldn't ignore it. The feeling in my gut told me that this wasn't just a random message from a colleague. It was something more. I didn't check the rest of the conversation. I couldn't bring myself to do it. But I knew. I knew that something had changed, and it wasn't just in the air around us. It was in him. I didn't confront him right away. I spent the next few days in a fog of confusion and disbelief. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't let this go. I needed to know the truth. So I started following him. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but I knew that I couldn't just sit back and do nothing. I followed him one afternoon, pretending to go for a walk when in fact I was tailing him. He drove to a small hotel on the outskirts of town. Nothing too fancy, but enough to make my heart race. I watched as he got out of the car and walked into the hotel with Olivia. I couldn't breathe. My world felt like it was spinning out of control. My husband, the man I had trusted with everything, was walking into a hotel with another woman, and I was watching him. I sat in my car for a while, unable to make sense of what I had just seen. It was like a dream, like something out of a nightmare. But it wasn't a dream. It was real, and I had no idea what to do next. I didn't go into the hotel. I couldn't. I just sat there, paralyzed by the weight of what I had witnessed. They came out after a while, walking together, laughing. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to watch them, but I couldn't look away. They kissed before she got in her car and drove off. It was the kiss of two people who didn't care about the damage they were doing. I drove away, not knowing where I was going, just needing to get away from that hotel, from the truth I didn't want to acknowledge. I spent the night at my friend's house. I didn't tell her everything, but she knew something was wrong. She could see it in my eyes. I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror, let alone explain what I had just learned. But I had to do something. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay. That night, I thought about all the years I had spent with Jason, all the things we had built, and now it felt like it had all been a lie. How could he betray me like this? How could he look at me and pretend that everything was fine while he was with someone else? I needed to know. I needed answers. The next day, I texted him. "We need to talk." When he came home that evening, I didn't wait for him to ask how my day had been. I just said, "I saw you." His face went pale. He didn't need to ask what I meant. He already knew. "I saw you with her." I continued, my voice steady despite the chaos in my mind. "I know about Olivia. I saw you kiss her." He stood there, frozen, for a long moment. Then he started to speak, but his words weren't enough. They never would be. He tried to explain, tried to make excuses, but all I could hear was the lie. All I could feel was the betrayal. "I never meant to hurt you, Sarah," he said, his voice breaking. "I don't know how it happened. It was a mistake, and I'm so sorry." "A mistake," I echoed, my voice rising with frustration. "You've been seeing her for months, Jason. You've been lying to me. You've been lying to us. Don't tell me it's a mistake." "I love you," he said, almost pleading. "I never stopped loving you. It just stopped." I interrupted, the tears finally coming to my eyes. "It doesn't matter what you say now. It's done. We're done." I didn't wait for him to respond. I turned away, walked out of the room, and sat down on the couch. I felt numb, like I was watching someone else's life unfold. My life, but not anymore. Not the way it had been. For the next few days, I couldn't bring myself to look at him. He was gone most of the time, either working or staying with friends. I didn't care. I didn't want to hear his apologies. They were too late. I needed space. I needed time to process everything that had happened. I moved out of the house 2 weeks later. I couldn't stay there. I couldn't stay in a place where everything we had once built had been shattered. The house was too full of memories, good ones and now painful ones. I needed to find my own peace. I didn't want to know where Jason went after that. I didn't want to know about Olivia. I didn't want to keep checking my phone for messages from him. I wanted to let go. For good. It's been a few months now since everything happened. And I won't lie to you. There are days when the pain feels unbearable. There are nights when I wish I could rewind time, wish I could go back to the way things were. But then I remember why I left. I remember the betrayal, the lies, the empty promises. And I remember that I'm stronger than I ever realized. I'm rebuilding my life day by day. I don't know where it will take me, but I do know that I'm no longer afraid to face the truth, no matter how painful it is. I'm learning to trust myself again, learning that my happiness doesn't depend on anyone else. And that's enough. It's been a few months, and while the pain still lingers, I'm beginning to feel something I thought I would never feel again. Peace. I've stopped checking my phone for messages from Jason, stopped wondering if I should call him or confront him again. I've started carving out a new life, one where I don't have to think about the man who betrayed me or the woman who helped destroy everything. I've taken up new hobbies, things I had forgotten I love doing. I joined a book club, started running in the mornings, and even began taking art classes. It felt like I was rediscovering pieces of myself that had been buried for so long under the weight of my marriage. And through it all, I learned that healing isn't linear. Some days are better than others, and that's okay. I've allowed myself to feel the anger, the sadness, but also the hope for what lies ahead. The phone call came unexpectedly one afternoon when I was returning from a run. It was from Jason. I hesitated before answering. I knew I didn't have to talk to him, but something inside me wanted to hear what he had to say, even if it was just for closure. "Sarah," he said, his voice cracking, "I've been thinking about everything a lot. I know I can't fix what I did, but I want you to know I'm truly sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." I could hear the regret in his voice, but it didn't move me the way it once would have. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was calm. It was almost surreal to hear his voice again, but I knew that part of me, the part that had once loved him, was gone. "Jason," I said softly, "I think we both know that saying sorry doesn't undo what happened. I don't need your apology anymore. What I need is to move on, to find peace. And I'm doing that. Without you." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I almost felt guilty. But then I remembered the way he had looked at her, the way he had lied, and the way he had broken my trust. "You're right," he finally said. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness, Sarah. I know I don't deserve it. I just hope you can find happiness again, even if it's without me." "Thank you," I whispered, the words feeling like the final step toward freedom. "I hope you find peace, too." I hung up the phone and sat there for a while, taking in the moment. That was it. The end of a chapter that had taken so much longer to close than I ever imagined. It's been nearly a year since I left Jason, and I still can't quite believe how much I've grown. There are moments when I still think about him, about the life we could have had, but those moments are fleeting now. I've realized that the only life I need is the one I'm building for myself. Ben and I are still together. We've taken things slowly, and while I'm not rushing into anything, I can't deny that being with him feels natural. It's different than what I had with Jason, and I've learned to appreciate that. Ben never pressured me to move faster, and he respected my boundaries. Most importantly, he gave me space to heal. I never felt like I was being compared to anyone else, and I think that's one of the greatest gifts someone can give. I don't know what the future holds for us, but I'm not scared anymore. I've learned to trust my instincts and follow my heart, wherever it leads. I still pass by the cafe where Jason and I used to go. I've even gone inside a few times, sat at the table where we used to sit, and smiled to myself. It's funny how a place that used to bring back so many memories can eventually become just another part of your life. Not a scar, but a small part of the story. A place that, in the end, didn't define me. I think that's what's most important in all of this. Realizing that your past, as painful as it might be, doesn't define who you are or who you become. You define that. And I've chosen to define myself as someone who's stronger, smarter, and more capable of loving again than I ever thought possible. I'm not sure where life will take me from here, but I know I'll keep moving forward. Because the future is mine now, and I'm finally ready to live it on my own terms. The days kept passing by, and I found myself in a rhythm again. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I had moments of doubt, moments when I missed the comfort of knowing someone would always be there. But I also had moments of pure clarity when I realized just how much I had grown. Every day felt like I was shedding a layer of the past, the part of me that was broken. I was becoming someone new, someone who could stand tall and look forward, not back. The world felt wider, more open, full of possibilities. As the months went on, I learned to forgive myself for staying in a relationship that had drained me. I stopped blaming myself for not seeing the signs with Jason sooner. I started to understand that I wasn't weak for loving him. I was strong for leaving him. And that was a realization I carried with me every day. I was learning how to love myself again. Life has a funny way of putting us through difficult experiences to teach us what we need to learn. I had thought I was the kind of person who could never let go. But I had let go, and I had become stronger for it. Now, I'm not saying I don't still have bad days. Of course I do. There are nights when the loneliness creeps in, and I find myself wondering if I made the right decision. But those moments are fleeting, and they pass quickly, because I know now that I am enough. I don't need anyone to complete me. I am whole as I am. I never imagined I would be here, a year later, living a life that feels like a second chance. It hasn't been easy, but it's been worth every step. The most surprising thing, though, is how much I've come to appreciate the small things in life. I've found beauty in the quiet mornings, in the feeling of walking through a park with no rush to be anywhere. I've found peace in the solitude, in doing things I never had the time for before. And while I don't regret everything about my past with Jason, I know now that it was just that, my past. It doesn't owe me anymore. I'm not who I was when I was with him, and I'm proud of who I've become. A few months after everything had settled, I found myself sitting on the balcony of my new apartment, sipping my coffee and watching the world around me. The city was waking up just like me. It felt like a moment of peace, like I had earned the right to just exist without constantly carrying the weight of the past on my shoulders. I wasn't sure where this journey would lead, but I was no longer afraid. I had spent so many years clinging to a life that wasn't meant for me, and now, with each day that passed, I was learning how to embrace uncertainty, how to take a deep breath and trust that I would be okay. Ben and I kept in touch, but we were taking things slow. He respected my space, never pushed me, and always made sure that I was comfortable with everything. We'd gone on a few dates here and there, but I wasn't ready to jump into anything too serious. Not yet, but there was something about him, something genuine and kind, that made me feel like maybe, just maybe, I could open my heart again. One evening, as we were having dinner at a local restaurant, Ben asked me, "Do you ever think about what the future looks like for you now? What you want, I mean?" I paused for a moment, the question catching me off guard. I hadn't really thought about it in a concrete way. Sure, I had hopes, dreams, but thinking about them as something that was actually possible for me felt strange. I wasn't used to considering my own desires first. I think about it a lot, I replied honestly, but I'm still figuring it out. The idea of my future isn't tied to anyone else anymore. I realized that for the first time, and that's kind of freeing. Ben smiled, a soft, understanding smile. I'm glad to hear that. You deserve to feel that freedom. Whatever happens with us, you should be your own person first. His words meant more than I expected. I was touched, not just by the fact that he said them, but by the fact that he understood. He wasn't here to fix me. He wasn't here to fill a void. He was here, in this moment, because we wanted to spend time together. That in itself was something new for me. But, of course, just when I started feeling like I had finally moved on, Jason appeared again. It wasn't a phone call, not a text, but a physical appearance. I was running errands one afternoon when I turned a corner, and there he was, standing right in front of me. I almost didn't recognize him at first. His clothes were different, his hair was a bit messy, but the moment our eyes locked, it was like time froze for a split second. "Sarah," he said, his voice softer than I remembered. "I didn't expect to run into you like this." I didn't know what to say. My first instinct was to walk away, to pretend I hadn't seen him, but I stood there. I took a breath, and I greeted him calmly, though my heart was pounding. "Jason," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What are you doing here?" He hesitated, clearly not expecting our meeting to go like this. I needed to see you. I've been thinking a lot about everything, about what happened, and I want to apologize again. I know I can't take it back, but I need you to know how sorry I am." I nodded, the weight of his words settling over me. The apology, however, didn't feel as heavy as it might have months ago. I had already forgiven him, not for him, but for me. It had taken me months to get to this point, but I was finally free. I hear you, Jason, I said quietly, but it's been a long time now. I've moved on, and I'm not angry anymore. I don't need you to fix anything. His face softened, and I could see the regret in his eyes. But I wasn't angry. It wasn't that I was cold or indifferent. I simply realized that we had both changed, and what we had wasn't the same anymore. It wasn't real anymore. I understand, he said quietly. I just wanted you to know that I've been working on myself. I hope you're happy. You deserve to be. I looked at him for a long moment. This was the closure I had been waiting for. The past was behind me. I didn't need any more answers. I'm happy, I said, smiling gently. I'm finally starting to feel like myself again. The next few months were filled with little victories. Each day felt like another step toward the life I wanted to live. Ben and I continued to take things slow, and I felt no rush. It wasn't about finding someone to fill the space left by Jason. It was about finding someone who would add to my life in a way that felt right. Jason and I crossed paths a few more times after that day. It was always brief, always polite. I wasn't angry anymore, but I wasn't sad either. We had both moved on, and that was all that mattered. One evening, as I sat at the window of my apartment, watching the city lights twinkle, I thought about everything that had happened. The heartbreak, the pain, the lies, and the growth. I had walked through fire to get to this point, but now I was standing on the other side. And it was beautiful. For the first time in a long time, I realized that I was okay. No, I was more than okay. I was thriving. I had let go of the past, and I was open to whatever came next. Not because I needed someone else to complete me, but because I had already completed myself. The months that followed brought new challenges, as life always does. There were still moments of doubt, times when I questioned whether I was truly healed or if I was just putting on a brave face. But more often than not, I found myself smiling without even realizing it. I catch myself enjoying the simple moments, like the warm cup of coffee in the morning or the way the sun fell on my skin when I went for a walk. I had started to embrace the idea of living fully again, not just surviving, but thriving. It was like I was finally stepping into the person I was meant to be all along, without anyone's approval or validation. Ben and I grew closer over the next few months. We were still taking things slowly, and I appreciated that. He never rushed me or tried to push me into something I wasn't ready for. He respected my space, and in a way, that was more than I could have ever asked for. We shared quiet dinners, long walks, and conversations that lasted for hours. There was no pressure, no expectations, just two people getting to know each other one step at a time. And every time we laughed, I felt like I was rediscovering the joy I had lost. Not because of him, but because of the place I was in within myself. One evening, as we walked through the park after dinner, Ben turned to me with a soft smile. "Sarah," he said, his voice tender, "I know we've taken things slow, and I'm not in a rush. But I just want you to know that I'm happy with you. I'm happy to be in your life, however that looks." I looked at him, my heart swelling with warmth. I hadn't realized just how much I had come to appreciate him until that moment. "I'm happy too," I said, my voice steady. "I never expected this, but it feels right. It feels like I'm finally in a place where I can be me, fully, without any reservations." He nodded, and for a moment, we just walked in silence, enjoying the calm of the evening. At the same time, I realized something important. As much as I had grown and healed, there were still pieces of me that needed mending. Not because of Jason's betrayal, but because of how long I had neglected my own needs, my own voice. One morning, I decided to take a solo trip. I packed my bag and drove to the coast, a place I had always wanted to visit but had never made the time for. It wasn't about running away from anything. It was about taking the time to be with myself, to reflect on how far I had come, and to see what was next for me. The sound of the waves crashing on the shore, the salt air, and the quiet moments alone with my thoughts were exactly what I needed. I spent the weekend wandering the beach, journaling, and reading. It was like I could hear my thoughts more clearly in the stillness. And for the first time in a long while, I felt completely at peace. When I returned home, I felt like a different person. I wasn't just stronger, I was more whole. I had found pieces of myself I hadn't realized were missing, and I had come to understand that I didn't need anyone to complete me. I was complete on my own. Ben and I continued to grow together, but I knew that whatever happened, I had the power to shape my own destiny. Whether or not he was part of it didn't change who I was or where I was going. Jason, on the other hand, seemed to have moved on as well. We ran into each other occasionally, and it was always polite, nothing more. I never felt any anger toward him anymore, just a quiet understanding that we were two people who had been part of each other's lives, but whose paths had now diverged. And that was okay. One evening, as I sat on the balcony of my apartment, looking out over the city, I realized something profound. The world had always been there, waiting for me to step into it. All it had taken was for me to let go of the past and embrace what was ahead. The pain, the betrayal, the heartbreak, it had all been a part of my journey. But it didn't define me. I had learned that the most important relationship I had was the one I had with myself. And once I understood that, I knew that no matter what happened next, I would be okay. As time passed, I continued to build on the foundation I had created for myself. The life I was living now wasn't perfect, but it was real. I was no longer living in the shadows of my past, and that was a powerful feeling. I spent more time with my friends, I traveled when I could, and I dedicated myself to the things I'd always put on the back burner: writing, painting, and learning new things about myself that I hadn't even known existed. And then, one evening, after a particularly long day at work, I received a text from Ben. It was short, just a few words. "Are you free this weekend? I'd love to talk." I felt a flutter of anxiety, quickly followed by curiosity. We had been taking things slowly, but this felt different. It was a simple message, yet something in me told me it was time for a more significant conversation. When we met that weekend at our usual cafe, Ben seemed slightly nervous, something I hadn't seen in him before. His usual calm demeanor was replaced with a quiet intensity. We sat down, exchanged pleasantries, and then he looked at me with a seriousness I wasn't used to. "Sarah," he began, his voice steady but soft, "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I want to be completely honest with you." My heart skipped a beat. The calm I'd felt up until now evaporated, replaced by uncertainty. But I forced myself to stay calm, to listen. "You mean so much to me," he continued. "More than I realized. And I've come to a point where I know what I want. I want to be with you, fully, completely. I know we've both been through a lot, but I feel like we have something real here. Something that can grow, if you're willing to take that leap with me." I felt the weight of his words settle over me. For a long moment, I didn't know what to say. I wasn't sure I was ready to make any big decisions. Not yet. Not after everything I'd been through. But as I looked into his eyes, I realized something. I had learned so much from my past. I had learned to trust myself, to trust my instincts, and to never settle for anything less than what I deserved. And right now, I was the one who had to decide what that meant for me. "I'm not sure what the future holds," I said slowly, trying to find the right words. "But I know one thing. I'm not afraid of it anymore. I've spent so long worrying about the past, but I'm ready to embrace what's ahead, with you or on my own." Ben's face softened as he reached out and took my hand. "I understand," he said, "and I'm willing to take things at your pace. No pressure, just honesty and whatever comes next." And that was enough for me. For once, I didn't feel rushed. For once, I didn't feel like I had to choose. The future, whatever it held, was mine to shape. The next few months were filled with small steps forward. Ben and I continued to date, slowly building something beautiful, but without the weight of expectations or the rush of a timeline. It felt real, and for the first time since everything had fallen apart with Jason, I could feel the possibility of a love that wasn't based on the past, but on the present. And then one day, as we were sitting on the same bench in the park where we had first talked, Ben turned to me with a quiet smile. "You know," he said, "I've never been this sure about anything in my life." I smiled back, feeling that same warmth in my chest. "I feel the same way," I replied. And for the first time in a long while, I realized that I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. I wasn't looking for validation or approval from anyone. I had already learned that lesson the hard way. What I had now was something much more valuable: self-respect and the freedom to build a life I could be proud of, with or without anyone's approval. As time passed, I came to understand that forgiveness wasn't just something you do for someone else. It was something you do for yourself. It wasn't about forgetting or excusing what happened. It was about letting go of the burden of the past, about freeing myself from the grip of betrayal and regret. And while it wasn't easy, it was necessary. Jason eventually reached out again. He was still with Olivia, and from what I could tell, he seemed genuinely happy. I didn't harbor any ill feelings toward him anymore. He had made his choices, and I had made mine. We were no longer part of each other's story, and that was okay. When I spoke to him on the phone that last time, I was calm, collected, and at peace. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Jason," I said softly, genuinely meaning it. "I'm happy, and that's all I need." And that was the final step for me, letting go completely, once and for all. It's strange how life works. You think you have everything figured out, and then it all falls apart. But that's when you learn the most about yourself. You realize that the greatest love you can ever have is the love you give yourself. And once you start loving yourself, the rest just falls into place. Now, as I sit here, looking out at the life I've built, I know that everything I've been through has made me stronger. I've learned that trust doesn't come easily, and that healing isn't linear. But I also know that the future is full of possibilities. And no matter what happens, I'll be okay. I'm ready for whatever comes next, with or without someone else, because I am enough.